All right, folks. Where is my friend? Oh, wow, looking for Marcus. And Laura, Marazzi, it's all yours.
As you see, I'm very, anxious now. Thank, so I beg your pardon for my English. It's far from perfect. I'm trying to let you understand my, my research project. I would like to thank Professor Basilio Montero. He was back in 2019. He was visiting professor at my university, and it was so kind to help me developing the ethical part, particularly of this research project. As you see, it's focused on science communication in general and the use of social media in science communication. I want to understand, I would like to understand how Italian State University communicates science, which are the goals, the methods, and the ethics which are involved in this report. My two tutors are Professor Paolo Bertucci, who is an engineer, very keen on science communication, and Paolo Mancini, who is a sociologist. So this is the short summary of what we are going to see this evening. Research goals, the research activities carried out up to now, the SICOM paradigms, and why the SICOM raises an ethical question, which are the ethics of science communication, the field research, the survey finding highlights, the ethical issues summaries, the conclusion, and short rep, very, reference. The research goal, as I said, uncover methods, goals, and ethical issues of the Italian State University science communication on social media. As Professor Montero said, we have most part of Italian university are state universities, which it means that they are mostly funded by the state. So this is why it seems interesting and understand why they communicate science. Right? Interesting.
Perfect.
Yeah, I hope that. Oh, yeah. So I am showing you the process I followed and to build a landscape. I studied the evolution of the Italian university system. Here in the States, your university have always been a competitive environment. In Italy, they don't. The situation changed dramatically in 1999 when we changed our third level structure, yes, to make it similar to the Anglo-Saxon system. Before we had only one level, which were longer than your one, which were something like, you have two levels, isn't it? Bachelor, correct me please if I'm wrong, bachelor and master, isn't it? We had, before 1999, we had only one level, which were longer. It means a little bit like adding the two of you, okay? So after this big change, the courses started to they duplicate and triplicate. So, and the universities started to compete with each other. Before, they didn't need it. They got the money from the state, and they didn't need to compete because they were, satisfied with that. They had plenty of money for teaching, for research, and then in 1999 it changed dramatically. Then we had the big change in communication, yes, with the social media, which are, the digital communication in general, from the web to the social media. I studied how the Italian university adopted the social media and why, how they used and for what. Then I made I studied the models of science communication, the deficit model, the public understanding of science, and the public engagement with science and technologies, which is the contemporary model of science communication. It means engage people with science from the start of the research project. And then the ethics of science communication, which is really the most, the newest part of my dissertation, because I haven't found in literature I had the scientific literature about ethics of science communication is scarce and really scattered. So I had to work a lot to put the things together and try to find which were the key criteria in this field, with the help of Professor Montari. So the tools I used are databases like Web of Science, ResearchGate, Scopus, PubMed, Open Science Framework, Science Direct, of course, recommendation from science communication experts, and as in snowball sampling, looking at the references in the articles I were.
Right, I think every time you click out, you need to click back on the screen. Can you try?
Okay. So the deficit model, as you see, it assumes that like people lack of understanding and information about science and technology. It is associated with a division between experts who have the information and non-experts who do not. The model implies that communication should focus on improving the transfer of information from experts to non-experts. Okay. So this model, as you see, was developed. It's it's a matter of fact. Lay people and scientists do not have the same level of information. It's a matter of fact. And it was here in the United States in the 70s. Some scientists started to try to measure the alphabetization of blind people. It seems an easy thing to be done, but it isn't, because how do you measure if someone is alphabetized in terms of science or not? What do you ask him or her? Miller and other scholars tried to create a framework for this purpose, and they elaborate a questionnaire which were related with the information about science. For example, the sun goes around Earth, or the opposite, or the methods of science, and what are three key aspects: information about science, information about the method of science, and information about the effects which science can have on everyday life. Okay. This is also a model which was, called like this for the first time in 1991 by Zeman. And it's, it's not in some way the oldest one which was overcome by others. It is always in the back foreground of all the others. In the recent times, an exploratory study was performed here in Ohio in order to understand if scientists, what scientists thought of like people. And the scholars realized that the more the scientists are related with fields like art sciences, the more they think that like people are ignorant. And the more, probably because they don't have in their study course, no, they didn't have majors like communication or sociology. So they don't, in some way, deficit model means I can be a physicist, but I can be an ignorant about Egyptian art. So we are all in some way ignorant of the field of art. Sorry for my English. No, I'm making a lot of errors. No.
Sorry for my age.
So this model creates a one-way linear communication. It means the diagnosis is you are ignorant. The therapy is swallow pills of information. One-way communication. Let's see it.
Holding it? Yes.
Public understanding of science. So after one of the big science after the Second World War, the science landscape changed dramatically, and for this reason, the scientists scholars started to understand, to study if people were aware of the role of science in everyday life. And we have seen the deficit model. They start realizing that lay people were really, they say, ignorant. I can't show you the data, but they were astonishing. Only 34% of people knew that the sun goes around the Earth. We're astonishing. I can't send you the article. We're absolutely astonishing. And so they started to develop initiatives with the press in order to enhance this knowledge. Saying a better understanding of science by citizens would have promoted the prosperity of the nation and enriched the lives of individuals, raising the quality of the choices they made in both the public and private sphere. So mostly the scientist communities were afraid that people not aware of the role of science in everyday life wouldn't have sustained the public funding of research. So they thought we must let people know the real importance of science. So this was the public understanding of science model. And they worked with editors and journalists in order to increase mass media coverage of scientific issues. And they developed PR activities to erase the stigma traditionally attached to scientific popularization. We in Italy, we use the word torre burnia. The university, the scientists were closed in their laboratories. They wouldn't talk to people. At a certain point, they thought, well, if we don't talk to people, we don't help them to understand how we are, what are we doing for our country, they could cut us the resources. And they started to enhance the role of education at school and in museums. Museums are not only as places where objects are displayed, but places where you can develop activities in order to educate people. The third paradigm is public engagement with science and technology. After 15 years doing in the PR activities, doing mass media activities with mass media, etc., they continue measuring this alphabetization, science alphabetization, but they realized that it wasn't the alphabetization about science wasn't increased. People were still. I would like to use the word ignorant, but yes, they were. The scientific knowledge was really again low. So they started to think maybe we must involve people in science from the beginning. It means it's a kind of it's not a model of communicating science, but it's also a kind of it's a relationship between science and society. Means bring science and the public into dialogue from the earliest stage of research. And the interactive science model, science is seen not necessarily flowing from science experts through the media to citizens. A science communication should be a conversation, not only informing people, but connecting into dialogue citizens, scientists, politicians, government, public officials, and journalists. So engage people with experiential communication and create a model of co-production of science, which is citizen science. I'm sure you have heard about it. It means asking people to contribute to the development of research. And as you see, it's a very, ambitious model. It means starting to hear to the request of people, to the request of society, and it can be very challenging for fields. In hard sciences, it's very challenging. Because of this, different level in knowledge. So the more the science is hard, the more it's challenging to develop this kind of model. And because they discourse realized that also that there's not a theoretical way of learning science. They why have to be alphabetized? I must know this and that. Why? They realize that people learn and retain what they think it's important for their life. For example, I would say that my brother is an engineer, electronical engineer, but in the field of humanities is a complete ignorant. So it's, what do you say? I'm an ignorant. For the my brother would be as a third level instruction, but in his field is in ignorance, so he has to be involved in order to learn information which are not in his field. And he must be convinced that it is useful for his life. So, why the toughest part of my research was related with ethics. What are ethics and ethical? I'm sure you know it. I didn't know what the panel would have been for this presentation. So ethical is that which understandably relates to us and our action, the demands, needs, claims, desires, and in general the lives of other people. An ethical consideration meaningfully relates the two levels of individual and collective behavior, as suggested by the two spelling of the term in term ethics in ancient Greek. Ethos, the individual practice and custom with E, and the ethos with eta, the intimate connection of all behavior to the dimensional community. Thank you very much. The relationship between the individual practice and custom and the society in the light of the principle and criteria shared by the individuals and society. Because of course, something that is ethical here, in Western societies can be not ethical in other societies, of course. And an essential feature of ethics is the universal representation. It means the tension towards the reduction of variability. That is the validity and justifiability of the act with respect to all human beings and perhaps beyond the human race. It means my relation with the society, my action can be ethical or not, in the light of the principle that we share, and which can be valid for the vast majority, for universally or for the vast majority of the society. So, why Chicon raises an ethical question? The ethical question is based on the assumption that the knowledge produced by science is a common good, particularly that achieved through public funding. This is why Chicon raises an ethical question. State university in Italy are public funded. So they should give back. They must give back to the society the products of their work. This good as the knowledge, well, the information and the knowledge which comes from information has a positive value in the social and economic context in which it is produced, distributed, and enjoyed, because of the beneficial effects that the innovations it produces has on societal development and in improving the living condition of world's population. Such positive value refers not only to hard and applied sciences, but also to humanities. I want to stress it because in the contemporary world, we tend to attribute a positive value mostly to hard sciences. But I've read so many documents from United Nations, from European Union, which stress the positive value of hard and applied sciences, of humanities, of arts. So all fields of science are give to the society, contribute, to have a beneficial effect on our societies. We couldn't live only with physics knowledge, with biological knowledge. Well, of course, medicine is kind of line of it, but I wouldn't live in a world without arts, without literature, without, and not only because I prefer this kind of world, but because state universities receive funding for these fields too. So they have to give back to the society. So in my in the tough work I've done, I was able to find these 7 key criteria. The first, epistemic justice and injustice with respect to both topics covered and research involved. The disclosure of research, uncertainty and limitation, the truthfulness, completeness and accuracy, the use of narrative techniques, the dialogic mode, the statement of research finding enters and interest conflicts, and the assessment of communication timing. Let's see the meaning of this. As epistemic justice and injustice, as a good of positive value, knowledge can be produced, managed, and distributed in just and equitable or unjust, unfair forms. It means the distributive concerning the way knowledge is distributed and or shared in terms of fairness in individual access to knowledge, disciplinary prevalence, the attribution of greater emphasis of value to some disciplines rather than others, as we have just said. At the individual level, fair or unequal recognition of credibility to the individual scientist or research group, which is a specific kind of epistemic justice or injustice, that is the testimonial injustice. As you see, the fairness in individual access to knowledge. All people should be able to have access to the information that scientists produce. The disciplinary prevalence and the attribute, we we say because in the contemporary world we tend to give more importance to medicine, to physics, to this kind of disciplines, and they are also they can find fundings easier also because of this kind of injustice. And at an individual level, it means give an unequal recognition could be, for example, the prevailing, the journalist preference for male scientists. I made a research in Italy during the pandemics, and with a colleague, we realized that the scientists on the most important newspapers in Italy, the interviewed scientists are in 75-80% male. Also, when the head of the research group is a woman, I've seen on a Corriere della Sera a case, for example, the team leader was a woman, and in the article, she had 3 lines of interview, and the director of the department, who was a male, 10. So it is a kind of testimonial injustice. I mean, like people reading that article would have, what would have understand? The most important scientist is the guy coordinating, the woman making the research. The disclosure of a certain research uncertainty and limitation. Science is always accompanied by a degree of uncertainty and might be subject to different interpretations. Uncertainty is thus a typical feature of science, and as such, it needs to be properly accounted for in the communication in order to avoid both the development in the public of unfounded expectation of infallibility and absoluteness, and the attribution to science itself of an unlimited capacity to solve problems. Science is product of a community of scientists. So it can't be an absolute truth. So it should be communicated. Because, as you see, science can't resolve anything. And scientists can't be accused not being able to, because truthfulness, completeness, and accuracy. This is another key point. Scientific truth it's not an absolute truth. A notion, a theory, scientific truth is a theory formulated at a specific point, a specific historical moment, specific point in time, on the basis of experimental evidence and methodologies shared by a scientific community, which is subject in a systematic and organized form to peer scrutiny. Scientific truth is not a definitive and absolute entity, but rather a perfectible occurrence in which divulgative communication takes a snapshot. It is a key point, really. we have seen in the science history that science has been changing during time. So today we have a scientific truth. Tomorrow, the progress in science will change it. Hopefully, will deepen our knowledge. So it's not a definitive, an absolute entity. And when you communicate science, you should be able, to let people understand that it's now it's true. Tomorrow we'll see. This is, this is the truth. And closely related to truth are the concepts complementary to each other of accuracy, completeness of information. All scientific communicator is called upon to weigh the reliability and rigor of information and to assess when and to what extent they can or should be reduced in the name of greater understandability. When you communicate science, you make you have to make it simpler. So you have to leave some information to let people understand. For example, explaining it's impossible in a newspaper article explain the method which have been used for research. Which the method in reality it's an important part of a scientific article. It's a part which appears examined with accurately. The use of narrative storytelling. Storytelling is a technique very used a lot in journalistic communication. But it's very different. It means communicate science using stories, focusing on the scientists, focusing on an episode. What has happened now, what has happened to that people, what has happened, using an examples, right? So, but it's very different from the logical process of science. Logical scientific communication use abstract concepts to infer generalization and deductive reasoning, and had a certain level of predictive power. Okay? Storytelling presents a specific case and generalizes it, and in inductive reasoning, deriving general rules. If I speak about this cell phone with a storytelling narrative, I'm saying I'm trying a theory using only this example, which can be very dangerous because if your cell phone is different, I'm depicting a reality on this cell phone, on your cell phone. The logical scientific communication means I have a general theory about, and from that I derive a conclusion about myself. The opposite. So it context dependence. It's not context dependent. The logical scientific means it's general. It is a general theory. And use abstract concept that do not change as circumstances change. Storytelling is context dependent, it's the opposite, because its meaning consists of the cause and effect links between the event it deals with. The event, and I generalize. The standard of legitimacy, the logical scientific communication, elaborate general principle and judged on the basis of the accuracy of these statements. The storytelling have enough with plausible representation of individual experiences. The judgment of validity of the message concerns the plausibility. I don't have I'm from this a general theory, and so if this the example is plausible, and from an example I can't draw a representation of the world. Another ethical criteria is dialogical. Since the contemporary, now we give importance to the engagement with people. The science communication should aim to develop a dialogue with people. We have seen. So from the informational mode, one way, and asymmetrical means I give you the information, you please you learn it, swallow it. To the dialogic communication, two-way and asymmetrical public engagement with science technology model. So this is, very easy to understand the ethical relevance. Scientific research is featured by different level of uncertainty and need for interpretation. Funding parts can influence the conduct of research and even its results. So the public must know who is funding the studies and any conflicts of interest that might exist among scientists, the subject, and its funders. And of course, it is particularly relevant when science is used in political decision making, because lobbyists could find it advantageous to generate doubts and controversies about the interpretation of data to protect their interests. And historical cases are the Exxon and case and tobacco in the 80s. During the 80s, the Exxon industries tried to, to create doubts about the climate change, and the use of fossil fuel, and the fact that fossil fuel could have enhanced the climate change. And also the tobacco industries for many years tried to spread doubts about the relation from the cause effect from between tobacco and lung cancer. But because of since the scientific truth is kind of agreement in a community of scientists, if a lobby found a research, they can use it for their purposes. And sometimes they can, they can found specific fields which are more at their site. I don't know if it's the English for research, but no. More than the research, which could be at the opposite side of the. And communicating too early again risks the accusation of inflating hype news, communicating too late, that of covering up events. Medvedev and Leach used the kairos, the concept, the Greek concept of kairos, which is in ancient Greek is the right moment. No, it's not the time which we can read on our watch, but it's a kind of it's the right moment. It's not the hour. It's the right moment for that. These scholars, yes, say that science communication, the right moment occurs when the values and needs of science communicator and audience are aligned in consonance. As communicator, I would say, I'd say is a very, hard concept to put in. But anyway, it has a high relevance when science communication has the purpose of persuasion, that is the achievement of goals related to opinion and behavioral changes. Communicating too early, it happened, for example, when something like 20 years ago, where was announced the cold fusion. It wasn't in a scientific article. It was this whole press science communication made by press releases, which weren't confirmed by scientific articles. So they were released before the scientific article were reviewed by the peers and revealed errors. Revealed to be errors. Sounds by press release, yes. So this is the part, the field research. I create on the basis of the information collected. I created a semi-structured survey of 47 questions and delivered in these 3 months in 2021. I selected a panel over 37 universities, which is the 55.2 of Italian state universities. I paid attention to represent all the regions in my country, all the dimensions of the university, mega, big, medium, and small universities. So 37 universities. The responses were 34, which is 50.7%, and I thought it could be a panel big enough to, to infer a general information. So some highlights of this, very long survey. The first step was I asked them, do you use social media for science communication? Because I knew that we knew that the state university used social media, but the first step was understand if they use it for science communication. So the you know, as you see, it's very, very used, they are very, very used tools for this purpose. The goals. The 73.5% of our university accrescere le conoscenze del pubblico, which means enhance the knowledge, science knowledge of the public. 73.5. And then, as you see, this 58.8, creare, gestire relazioni con gli stakeholders. It means create and deal with stakeholders, which is not, which is a PR goal, not a goal related with let people know, enhance the people knowledge about science. As you see, science, realize that science is used also for PR purposes, for reputation building purposes. And a specific question, the relevance of science, social media science communication in university reputation building. As you see, from 1 to 5, as you see, most part of Italian university said that yes, we use it, we want, we think that science communication is relevant, communicating science is relevant for reputation building. The most communicated cases, 67.6%, premi e riconoscimenti ai ricercatori, which is awards and awards to scientists. And then 64.7, presentazione e risultati di ricerca. The most selected option is prizes to scientists, which is not communicating science results. And then, well, yes, the second one is presentazione e risultati della ricerca, presentation of the scientific results. And then the third, 55.9, ottenimento di finanziamenti, financing, gaining financing. Again, a PR, reputation building goal. The most communicator measures, you know, the medicine, and then science, life sciences, you know, as you see. They do not have rivals. They are the most communicated. Then scienze ingegneristiche, engineering, and then physics, fisica e astrofisica, informatica and artificial intelligence. Physics and astrophysics.
Linguistics. Huh? Linguistics too, also. 23.5%.
But this should be the most sure, the surer result is the prevalence of medicine and life sciences. Because the other, for example, it depends which departments the university has. Because, for example, the small university usually do not have medicine, anyhow, the medicine and life sciences, which are the most represented in the press. Usually, they are the most represented. Well, in Italy, all scienze letterarie, linguistics, we have also a very long tradition in humanities like archaeology, so which are in that field, scienze letterarie. And the other, as you see, the less communicated are philosophy, scienze filosofiche, and scienze giuridiche, which is law, and mathematics, nothing. No one said. Zero. One zero. The most engaging topic, since we are, in the social media environments, the most engaging are, again, medicine and life sciences. And then, but we see here scienze ambientali del clima, climate sciences, which are engaging, but not most communicated. Even though they are not most communicated, they are engaging. And again, scienze ingegneristiche, yeah. Mathematics, again, zero, of course. And scienze filosofiche, philosophia, and law, only one university. But probably that university was one good university which had got only, philosophy and law departments and things. Disclosure of research consistency and limitation. How much is it important? I asked to my colleagues. No one said that it's not important, but you see, the 3, which is 26.5%, and 17.6%, the 2 means that that's not so much, and they don't give so much value to this aspect. But I would say it's quite difficult with social media, try to, to give an idea of uncertainty and limitation of the research. Truthfulness, completeness, and accuracy, as you see, is very relevant. Thanks to God. It's very relevant. Truthfulness, completeness, and accuracy, again, I tried to deepen this concept because of we are dealing with social media, which way we can use to, to enhance the truthfulness, completeness, and accuracy. I thought it could be a link to a scientific article, a link to a web page, or a link to researcher's web page, or a contact for more information. Well, you see sempre, it means yes, always, link to the scientific article, a link to the web page. So it's probably a link to the web page is the most used way, because social media communication is very synthetic. The dialogic mode, they don't care. And it's, it's quite, it's weird because the social media are the best tool for developing a dialogue. Would should be, but it doesn't matter for my counterparts universities. As you see, the 5. No. The visibility of all researchers, which deals with justice, no, testimonial justice or injustice. We see all the subject, all the researchers which contributed to the research are indicated. Yes, the most part say that they they write about all of them. The posts about male scientists, the percentage is quite high, I would say. Half of the posts are involved female scientists. The use of storytelling is quite low. Puramente descriptivo is descriptive, and this one narrative and storytelling quite low. So the statement of research funding and interest conflicts is high. They call it, well, one said that it's not important. The most part give importance to this aspect. How do they select? Which criteria do they use? The topic usefulness for audiences, the presence of the topic in the public debate, the public sphere, are the most important criteria in selecting the topics, the news. Yes. And what this is the how famous is the rivista, no magazine, journal, the journal, yes. So the third can be how important is the journal where your research has been published. So just to summarize, the epistemic justice and injustice with respect to researchers is high, so they tend to represent all of them in social media, and about topics is low. So they follow the trend. Medicine and life sciences are public likes, so we publish more. Disclosure of research, uncertainty is low, and limitation is high. The truthfulness, completeness, and accuracy is high. It's considered a relevant criteria. The use of storytelling is low, and the dialogic mode is low. Statement of research funding and interest conflict high, and the assessment of communication timing is low. I realize that they don't consider the time in ethical criteria. Really. It sounded a kind of strange question. So the conclusions, very summarizing, very Italian State University's communication of science and social media seems to be a tool in between public relation and fact communication for public engagement in between. Use it for for both, mostly for public relation. Only some ethical issues are fully considered highly relevant by most Italian state universities so far. And university science communication on social media doesn't portray the complexity of science, but it can be, on social media, probably it would be hard to, portray the full complexity of science. Short references. That's it.
Thank you very much. It definitely, for us as a student, gave us an idea of the process involved in doing a dissertation. So you can see now what are the various components in the process that is involved. Thank you for sharing that. And also, thank you for what we have learned. And I'm seeing you've taken notes, you've taken pictures, slides, and it was very, I myself, as I was reading your thesis, a lot of interesting things that I did not know, particularly testimonial justice. That was a concept I was not familiar with, testimonial justice. So, questions, please. Can you and see? Let's see if you can see some faces on the side. There's a mark.
Okay, already has a question.
No, I'm going to go second. I'm not prejudicing anything, so please let someone else speak first. I have more than one question, that's why.
I have a question. Do you think that there a lot of people don't use social media because it's such a new avenue of communication? Because, we mentioned institutional, right? And I feel like social media is such a young media. I work in social media. That's like my job on a day-to-day basis. Like the generation older than me doesn't know how to use it, I find. Do you find that in your research, a lot of people just aren't familiar with the medium?
Sorry?
Were you just, when you were doing this research, did you find that people were not familiar with how to use social media?
No.
No?
I mean, it wasn't my perspective. Italian university invested very much in social media, and we have seen a lot, few researchers in Italy which say that people are increasingly using social media to collect information about.
First of all, congratulations. This is a really, really good study, and your English is great. Really, I don't think you needed to worry about your English. It was, I think everyone here.
We couldn't do the same thing in Italian.
Yeah, we could never do that in a different language. So congratulations on that too. I have two questions.
Yeah.
The first is, I was looking at how the most communicated majors don't necessarily relate to the most engaging topics. Like the most engaging topic was climate justice, but that did not relate to the most communicated majors. So when the most communicated majors are medicine and life sciences, is that because they receive the most funding? Or is it because they are communicated the most, they receive the most funding?
Can I pitch in on this? Sorry. COVID.
What about it?
Her research is after COVID. So that can also be connected, because that's the idea that I had when you were showing the statistics. The first thing was medicine, and the second was biology and life sciences. So I was like COVID, because COVID, Italy was one of the first countries in the world.
No, I mean, no. In the sense that it's not really, the data are not related with
The pandemic.
with the pandemic, because we have a long history in Italian newspapers about the prevalence of medicine in science communication.
Right.
Since, after the Second World War, when started the, the first science sections on the most important Italian newspaper, they always have been devoted to medicine, sometimes to physics,
Right.
but it has always been
Medicine has always been on top.
Exactly. The top topic was always, has always been medicine.
Thank you. That was my first question.
It's quite probably there is also a very, this relation is a thing that interests very much to people.
So that sort of explains it. Thank you for that. The second question I had was, it's very interesting to me that you included the timing of communication as an ethical issue. I'd like to understand from your point of view, how do you see timing of communication being a matter of ethics?
Because sometimes the problem is if you want to build your reputation with science, you are tend to communicate very quickly by your results.
Understood. Okay, got it. Got it. Understood. From that point of view.
And the sample I made with the cold fusion, they used science communications, science by press releases, but the press releases were released too early. And the research was discovered to be,
Correct.
Okay, so the ethics of releasing things before they are properly scientifically proved or verified.
And the phenomenon, in this case, the phenomenon of getting too early during the pandemic increased because of the preprint articles increased a lot. So a lot of preprint articles were used by press, and it was revealed to be, false. English Journal of Medicine also articles were discovered to be false.
So this is more in relation to the authenticity and the correctness of the veracity of the information itself, unless and until it's proved to be 100% true.
Exactly.
Okay, understood. Thank you so much.
Yes, Professor Mark.
Okay. Am I allowed to speak now, or?
Yeah, good.
Oh, good. Okay. Laura, it's actually very interesting to see a perspective on communication from Italian universities. The question that kept circulating through my head as I was looking at your survey and the interview questions was, and you may have said it, I may not have caught it, I'm not sure, but have you looked into the question of how communication changes before and after the equivalent of tenure? In other words, one of the things I'm very curious about is the motivation for communication. And are there any ways in which that you discovered that universities are promoting, either as a change in job description or as a part of changing job ideas, or maybe even formally, this idea of communicating to a public? Because ultimately, like, if it's a public university, fundamentally the taxpayer is paying the salary of the professor. And I would assume that there must be some discussions at some high level in the Ministry of Higher Education about that relationship and the way in which the university essentially has to also be a PR voice for itself. So I'm sort of wondering, have you had any exposure at all to discussions about communication in that context?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
No.
That's the question. So, that sort of really caught my attention, because it seemed like you were going in that direction. And I was very curious because I know, for example, like, you know, in the US, I'm very, very curious about the relationship between essentially faculty output and faculty pay. Because it's one of the fundamental questions, right? And it's not a question to question ourselves as a group, but just to ask generally, like, you know, as a university, the university may want something, but what it pays for is something else. And this is a universal problem that every single university faces. And when you bring in the question of, you know, communication to a public, it's actually an incredibly critical question because, like, for example, you know, I'll give you an example. Like the fact that we're doing this online, we are in fact communicating to a public. This might be recorded, it might be watched later on, it might be seen, I don't know when, but you know, it's a commitment that we're making to communicating our own social science to public as well. And I'm just very, very curious about the way in which European public universities are looking at the impact of social media as a tool for actually enhancing their own status or as a tool for changing how professors do their job. That's sort of what I'm wondering about. It's not really a question, it's more of like a, have you stumbled into this rabbit hole as well? It seems like you're about to.
You know, it's my research is, you know, probably an exploratory study because for what I know, no one has never worked on this field before. So I try to realize if and how the Italian university used social media in science communication, and but they don't want, in some way, they don't want to speak about this issue in terms of accountability.
Did you get any pushback? Were people sometimes reluctant to answer these questions?
Sorry?
Did you get any pushback? Did you have any difficulties in professors like wanting to help you or wanting to assist you in your research?
I didn't. No.
Very interesting.
No.
Huh. No, if your study is exploratory, you're the first to do it. I'm really very impressed. It's a very, very interesting area to explore.
I think so. It's the first step.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? Any questions? Yes, we're going to keep just a very basic on a data sampling. Out of the 55 universities, 50 responded. Is it one professor or their media communication individual, or is several people of? How did you count the responses?
You know, I asked the collaboration of my counterparts in the university. So they're responsible for.
Just one person.
Yes, they're responsible for the social media communication.
Like a spokesperson. This makes it okay.
Not a spokesperson.
Media or.
No, well, usually it's the head of the communication department.
Okay, yeah, it covers. Anybody else? Yes, Galia.
Well, first of all, congrats because it's a really good research. For me, what's interesting the point that is Facebook, this the platform that more used to communicate science. In your opinion, why they choose more in Facebook instead of Twitter or a platform?
It's not very, you know, it was the first and most popular platform introduced by the Italian universities, Facebook and Twitter. I don't know, I didn't ask them the reason why they use Facebook for it.
Very great.
It's a nice mix of visual and text.
Just a little parenthesis. Those who don't know Galios is a master's student. She's an engineer. She's doing a master's degree. And yeah, smart young lady.
My tutor is an engineer.
When you say that the engineers consider that we are ignorant about the humanity, I will identify.
You know, these are, all of us are ignorant in the field of the other one. So the best is to dialogue with each other.
Communication,
You have
central point.
exactly two-way asymmetrical. And
What inspired you to look at the science communication aspect of Italian universities? How did you specifically arrive at?
well, I have been in charge of the, been for 18 years in head of the
Okay, that explains it.
social media, press relation, institutional communication. It's free from
Yeah.
my work. So in sampling also, delivering the press survey, I used my relation with my counterpart. Because the survey was very long, asking them to give me.
Did they, was it like a checklist that they had to tick off, or did you personally go ask them the question?
With Google module.
Okay, Google Forms, okay.
Yeah. Google form, yes.
Thank you.
Good. So I guess all good things have to come to an end. And we want to thank very much. And I think officially in January you'll be Dr. Laura. See, so we are going to declare you the
I give my work to the reviewer. Pray for me.
And thank you for joining us. Our students here. It was supposed to be an off day, but still you made it. And because Laura is here only for 2 days, and could not.
Thank you for the
Wonderful,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Amazing.